everyone. And as you heard, my name is Alex Fayman. I was talking to you about, the topic of debt and just things that revolve around it. Um, it will sound like I'm like this, finance professor, preacher guy who's telling you how to like live your life and stuff. But I want you to know that for 3 of my college years, I was a janitor, and I proudly cleaned a lot of restrooms. And and I paid off my college loans when I was in my 30s. So like, I mean, I walked that walk, and I also made so many mistakes in my life. When I teach personal financial planning, my students hear all of my personal mistakes, things that I could have done differently. So this is, this is the framework, and I'm here to just relay it to you. So everything that you guys need to know in 40 minutes, here we go. So first thing is you have to put together a personal balance sheet. What that is you need to be able to know and be able to tell, like if somebody were to ask you within 10 minutes or 5 minutes, to be able to know what is your personal net worth is. And your net worth is your assets minus your debt. And where you want to be is you want to have more assets than debt. Your assets are your bank accounts, your savings and your checking accounts, your investments. If you have retirement accounts, obviously that is a little early probably in your life for that. But personal property, car, if you own a home, those would be your assets. And your debt would be your current debt and your long-term debt. So we're talking about, your bills and your credit cards and your house loan, your mortgage, your car loan, perhaps your student loans. And the ideal thing is to have your net worth be positive, and then for this number to grow throughout your life. So your goal is to always have this relationship in a way where your assets are actually greater than your liability, so you have a positive net worth. So if you are struggling with personal debt, perhaps you are in this situation where your net worth is negative. So what are you going to have to do? So the conversation really, guys, whether you have a lot of personal debt or you don't have a lot of personal debt, this conversation is worthwhile. Because if you do the things that we discuss here right, then you will never be in a situation to have a lot of personal debt. And if you have a lot of personal debt already, then it's important for you to know how much assets you have, how much debt you have. Like these are the starting points, like to understand where you stand before you can fix things. And that brings us to this slide. And hopefully this is going to be made available to you. But this is essentially a way to put together a budget. You have to, like, if I were to ask you right now, how much money do you have a month, for how much do you bring home? What are all of your expenses? And what is the net? How much do you have after all of your expenses, so you can put money into savings, perhaps this line M here at the end. You should be able to know those numbers with some level of certainty, if not exactly. And so there are 2 financial statements whenever you're going to run a company. A company has a balance sheet and a company has an income statement. So do people. So you need to know what your balance sheet looks like what Alex Fayman's balance sheet looks like, and what Alex Fayman's income statement looks like. And the income statement is just not an income statement. It really becomes a cash budget. How much is coming in at the top and everything that goes out at the bottom. So you know the net. And hopefully what you have here is a positive number at the bottom. The reason why we get into a lot of debt is we essentially live beyond our means, whereby we spend more money than we bring in. And essentially, kind of like our government does that. That's that deficit that you hear. They bring tax revenue, and then they spend money on various programs, and they spend more than they bring in tax revenue, and there's that deficit. Only the government can print money, the government can issue bonds to borrow this. For us, this is a lot more difficult to overcome, so we have to be a lot more cognizant of our budget and how it looks. Okay, so one of the big things is being able to formulating a budget and be able to stay within your means is to control the expenditures. Again, it doesn't matter whether you already have all this personal debt or you are just trying to make sure that you never get into that point. This is going to be important. So this will allow you to get out of debt if you already have it, or this will help you to never get into that situation in the begin with. So the formula is the same, but controlling the expenditures is huge. There's this saying that it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. You know, that's why you have all of these athletes and famous people who make millions of dollars a year, but you find out later that they're broke because you can always spend more than you make, almost always. Maybe Elon Musk won't have that problem. So anyway, automatically deduct savings from your paycheck. That's number one. It's kind of like it will work as a disciplinarian. If when you receive your paycheck, automatically, whatever that amount is, $50, $100, $200, whatever you can do, goes into the savings, and you know that that money is put aside. That's one thing, and by doing that, you're paying yourself first before you pay, like, you know, your bill people, your credit card people. You pay yourself first by putting that money in a savings account. Another big problem with controlling, so by deducting the money into the savings account, it limits how much you will spend, you know, on going out and eating, how many times you're gonna eat. You know, I love Chipotle, like I could eat there like every day, but like if you're gonna take this money out and put it in the savings, you know, that's it, that it's gonna discipline you. You're not gonna spend as much. Anyway, so then cash transactions is a big problem if you are a person who still spends cash. And it's obviously not a lot of us do. Regardless, they're very difficult to keep track. And I've joked for years, like once the money is cash in my wallet, it's almost like I don't even like look at it as money anymore because it kind of goes away. And because of it, I try to, but the credit cards, all of that stuff is easy to track. It's easy to see your spending. And I want to recommend this app. It's called Mint. And I have a link here as well. And this thing you link, it's highly reputable. You don't have to worry about it. It's in the textbooks, in the finance textbooks. But you can connect your bank accounts to it, all your financial accounts to it. So if you're like withdrawing money from the ATM, i.e. cash, it will track the cash. You know, you're spending money on credit cards. It will know where you spent the money, on what categories. So it really tracks your finances and makes budgeting a lot easier. And also be aware that your expenses come in these two categories, variable and fixed. Fixed is kind of like the stuff you have to spend. You have to, you know, pay for your car, that payment, or your rent or your mortgage. But elected things are things that you choose to do. And these elected expenses, this is where you could do some work as far as cutting down and trying to get to living within your budget so that you actually have savings where you can start reducing your personal debt. I also threw in a couple of formulas for you guys, to something that, you know, financial planners will look at. Like if you go to a financial planner, he'll put together, first thing they'll do is they'll put together a balance sheet and an income statement for you. And then they will run a couple of these ratios to see where you are. So for example, I do have here, before I get to the ratios, that you should, in an ideal world, not only not have negative net worth, but also have actually 3 to 6 months in living expenses saved up in case something happens. But I know that if you're overcoming personal debt, that could be a very difficult thing to have just cash laying around just in case. But building up that fund might also give you discipline as well. And in the future, it can prevent you from having such issues, especially if something comes up in your life that's unexpected. So I have to mention it as well. But the debt ratio, you look at all of your debt that you have, that you owe on your credit cards, on your car, on if you own a home, and then you look at all of your assets from that balance sheet that we talked about from on the very first page. And it should always be well below 50%. Like 50% is a ceiling. So obviously, if this is below 50%, that implies a positive net worth. And that because your assets are greater than what you owe. So right here, you have everything that you owe. And here you have on the bottom, everything, total assets, everything that you own. And if this is 50% or 0.5, that means that for every dollar of things that you own, you owe 50 cents in debt. So you have more assets than you do debt. That means your net worth is positive. And as you get older, this ratio should keep moving down. And finally, there's this also a ratio called long-term debt coverage ratio. And this one should be below 2.5. So if you're thinking about, borrowing money at any point, car payment, you should be thinking about the fact that the income that you have for expenses, you get a paycheck, taxes get taken out, you got your paycheck, the net of the taxes. You should be able to divide all of your debt payments by that, that paycheck by all of your debt payments and get something that's below 2.5. Again, this is kind of like criteria for to know where you are if you're overreaching as far as your debt exposure is concerned. All right, let's go. So I have a couple of slides devoted to credit cards. There is no way in heck that you will ever overcome, okay, too strict. It's very difficult to overcome personal debt or to build wealth if you owe money on credit cards. It's kind of like a rule number one. So, and these things, think about a credit card. When you get a car loan, let's say the loan has an interest rate of 5%. Well, if you don't pay your car loan, they'll come and take your car. So there is some kind of a assurance collateral for the lender, your car, even though it's going to be losing value, this and that. But with credit card, somebody is giving you like money to just go and buy anything. And if you go and buy a candy bar and eat it, what are they going to repossess if you don't pay for it later? Nothing. So because of that, the interest rates on credit cards are so high. And because the risk for that loan is so high. So what you have to do as a consumer is understand that and not use credit cards as a source of a source of a loan. It should only be something that simplifies your transactions. Paying for things today, it's easier to do it on a credit card. I have a venture Capital One card. I get miles on it. There's various rewards that you can earn, and just the ease of transactions and things that you can do with credit cards. But once you start using it as a lending thing, as a borrowing mechanism, it really becomes a big drain on you. So some of these statistics hopefully will be eye-opening to you, but 2/3 of college freshmen and 90% of seniors have credit cards. Well, that should make sense. But almost $6,000 of debt on a credit card for an average American household. And with interest rates in as high as 20% or higher, it's so difficult to pay for these things. And this is the big one right here, guys. Consumers don't consider the total cost of goods and services when because they don't consider the interest. You go into the 7-Eleven and you're buying a couple of candy bars and it's like $5 or something, or $4. And you think, oh, I just spent $4. But if you got a balance running on your credit card, by the time you might finish paying for those candy bars, they might be $20 candy bars. So, and we really don't think in those terms. Credit cards offer teaser rates where like first year, just sign up. First year, 0%. But then next year, the thing kicks up and you have a problem. Also, compound interest, meaning that credit cards charge you interest and then they charge you interest on interest. So your interest builds up exponentially what you owe on a credit card. I mean, it's a great business for them, bravo to them. We just have to be smart about using it, and understand where we want to go within within that framework. And where you want to go is you want to build wealth, not debt. And also the cash advances are a killer. As soon as you get a cash advance from an ATM on a credit card, you automatically right away start paying like 25, 30%, some very high interest rate from that moment the money leaves the ATM, not when you get the bill a month later. And also when you try to pay off that ATM withdrawal, that cash advance, when you pay money to the credit card, they use your payments to retire balances that have lower interest rates first. So those cash advances that have like 30% rates or whatnot, you're not going to end up even paying them off until all of your previous debts are paid off that have like a 15% interest rate. So that cash advance is going to sit there potentially, unless you completely pay off the credit card to zero that month. Also, it's what the credit cards kind of are bad about is that you're obligating future income today. It's kind of like you're saying, I'm spending what I make next month or next year. And it's limiting you as an individual with the things you can do going into the future. And there's always that thing, oh, you're building the credit history. There is an advantage to that, absolutely. But only if you do it responsibly, by realizing that you can do this without actually accumulating that high interest debt. So as an example, if you're paying just a minimum balance on your credit card that has a 15% rate, but typically they have more, it will take you like 6.5, almost 7 years to pay off your credit card. And this is assuming that you don't spend anything else. Okay. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I thought it was worthwhile. So 17% of undergrads pay off their credit card every month. You want to be here. But look at all of the others. And this is where it's difficult. It's difficult as an undergraduate student. You have this thing that you can spend without having to take cash out of your pocket. And this is where it's going to take discipline to not get there. And then once you're there, to get out of it. So this is a credit card habit list. I'm not going to read you the questions. You can look. But like if somebody were to ask you right now, for example, do you know how much money you owe on your credit card? And your answer is no. Or your answer, are you ever afraid to look at what you owe on the credit card? I think one of those questions is that. So like these, if you answer yes to any of these questions, you can do this yourself later. You know that there's an issue there, okay? And you need to look at that, because this is the only way you're gonna get out of personal debt is first resolve your credit card problems. It's kind of like, put the mask on yourself and then the women and children, or then not the women, I apologize, the children, So I just want you guys to understand that this is a very important issue. Then you need to also worry about your credit score. You have to every year get a free copy of your credit report from one of these three companies, and just check on it that nothing crazy is happening there. Like, you will know, like, what if there's an account open in some store and you owe money to that store and it's not you. Like, you need to be in touch with what your credit report looks like. Also, every 90 days, you can set up something called a fraud alert by contacting one of these companies online and looking for a fraud alert on their website. And essentially what that does is just locks your account, and nobody can open any credit in your name. And you can renew it for free every 90 days. And then if you're ever like at Best Buy and you actually do want to open your own credit, they'll when they run your credit, they'll actually call the store to make sure that it's all right. Whoever is their lender, to make sure that it's you who is getting the credit. And it also gives you like an extra barrier to go through, so you don't open on a whim an unnecessary account. So why is your credit score important? Why is it important to not mess or reduce the amount of debt that you have outstanding? And we'll talk about how you can do that as well. But one is what people don't really talk about a lot. Like, notice I have ability to get a loan as second. But before you get a loan, you need to get a job, because you need to be able to show that you can pay for that loan. And when I got hired by MSU Denver, they ran my credit history. And most employers do that as part of their employment check. So the way that they would do a criminal background check, they also check your credit history. And they want to hire people that are responsible with their credit histories. Employers do. Because if you are not, first of all, it shows that you're disciplined. Second of all, it shows that you are not sitting at work thinking about your debt problems instead of working. And but it also affects your ability to get approved for a loan, your ability to pay lower rates on loans as well. Two people walk into a bank, one is laden with debt and has a bad credit score, one does not. If both get approved, the person who has less debt, higher credit score, is going to pay a lower interest rate on their loan. Insurance rates, I'm sure you guys are aware of that, right? When you get your car insurance, they run your credit history to see how much debt you have, what your credit score is. And insurance industry shows that there's a huge correlation between people having bad credit histories and people having bad driving tendencies. And so when you have a bad credit report, you tend to pay more for your car insurance. Obviously it affects your mortgage rates. And the FICO is the type of score that you will be looking up. You can go to this link here and to get an estimate of your score. Those scores range from 300 to 850. You want to be in a range above 700. That will make things a lot easier for you when you're borrowing money and the things that you need to do. Working to reduce debt or working towards not having debt to begin with is, and think about it as this flexibility. It's this freedom to do more things. More options will be available to you in life. So as far as controlling your debt, you have to keep in mind that debt is expensive. Whatever it is that you're buying by borrowing, it is actually so much more expensive than what you're paying for it. You just have to consider the implications. Not only the interest rate, which is the explicit cost, but also implicit cost, which is like, the worry that you're going to do about that loan and, the overhang and things like that. So it's not just the explicit, it's not just the interest, it's not just the cash, it's the worrying and all that stuff. Sometimes it's even more expensive than the actual interest rates that you pay. You should never borrow to spend. So that example of buying candies at 7-Eleven on a credit card should never happen unless you're planning to pay off that credit card that month. So you only borrow money for like big ticket items, you know, car, home, things of that nature, not your personal living expenses. Even when you're in college, even when it's so hard, that's when you do the training. That's when you do the boot camp. That's when you learn to do those things as well, okay? You have to understand that you're kind of like, when you finish your school, the less debt it's obvious that you will have, you know, student loans, but to have a lot of loans beyond that, you need to work about as much as you can at not having those obligations, and giving you a chance. It's almost like everybody finishes college and here comes the race and you're running with a tire behind your back. Like, that's what it is. And you should not let get to that point, or do now, if you are there, everything you can to get out of there. So you have to use cash rather than credit. You know, the trade-off is that cash reduces your liquidity. By paying cash, you have less liquidity, meaning less ability to pay for things. Less, like, you know, you'll feel more comfortable if you have more money in the bank because you know you can pay for anything that might come up. That's liquidity. But when you pay cash, you give up this liquidity, but you gain not having to deal with the cost of borrowing, and you gain also being able to access credit in the future. There's also a debt limit ratio. Like, you should, a limit ratio that you should never go above with your debt. So all of your debt payments divided by all of your total monthly take-home pay, it should be below 15%, but it's non-mortgage payments. If you add your mortgage, then it should be never above 36. If you are above these limits, then we need to talk about how you can get out of there, how you can drop your, drop that debt limit ratio, drop below that limit. One last thing, you should, as a rule, all consumer debt should be paid back every 4 years. Meaning, whenever you get any kind of consumer debt, not mortgage, even car we can throw in, because you should really pay off a car in 4 years. A lot of people push it to 5 and 6 to have lower payments, but optimally you should do it in 4. And again, like, I've done it in 5 a couple of times in my life. Like, I just want you to understand, I'm not like preaching like this is how I live and you guys got to do this. You know, I'm telling you, like, this is the right way, okay? And so consumer credit always should be long-term, short-term. You should never, you know, you try to pay it off. Everything should, like, cutting off all of your unnecessary expenses to pay off a credit card is a blessing. You know, it's not like a horror thing. Also, make sure that whatever what I meant there was, you know, your consumer debt, what you owe on the short-term debt, that it fits within your goals and your budget, that you can actually afford to make payments on it before it's done. Don't analyze the things afterwards, analyze them before. I know that right now, if at this point you're looking at having tons of debt, you still have to go through this analysis, because you have to figure out, that will tell you where you are and the necessary steps that need to be taken to get out of that situation. So understanding how costly consumer debt is important. Like paying with a credit card for something that you will just eat or just have fun, a concert ticket. Obviously, we're not doing any concerts right now, but you know, it should kind of like feel, I don't want to say dirty, but like something that you don't want to do. You know, the credit card is something you will only spend on, first of all, if you can pay it off at the end of the month. But if it's an absolute, like, you know, something like that, then it has to be not something that you're going to have some fun with. A medical bill, something like that. And again, the more you borrow now, the less you're going to be able to borrow in the future. So if your bills are piling up, this is kind of what we're talking about here, having too much debt. Maybe you're already there. You have to, number one, run that budget on that second slide or third slide and try to figure out where you can make the cuts. There's no easy solution unless, there's not going to be like a helicopter dropping money from the sky. You're going to have to figure out where those savings can come in your expenses. You have two options. You can raise how much money you're making, but you're probably a full-time student. You have a lot of stuff on your plate. That will be a very hard thing to do. The other option is lower how much money you're spending. That's where you can do some work, okay? And use self-control in the use of credit. That's like very, very important. It's right there, it's in your credit card, but it still should be a mile away. Speak to your creditor to negotiate repayment if there is an issue, and I'll have that on the next slide as well. But, if you're late on a payment, I've had a couple of times where I would miss over the years a payment on a credit card, even though I always try to make my payments in full. That part of my financial life, I've always tried to do well. Except that there's one thing that I did, I'll talk to you about in a minute, but they'll work with you. You can call a credit card company and you'll tell them, look, I missed a payment, and they'll take off the late charge, obviously, if it's not like every month that you're doing this, but if you haven't done it in a year or 2 years, they'll remove the late charge and they can work with you on how you can repay this money. So also, you can speak to a credit or debt counselor. If it's a little more serious than you think you can handle on your own, I have a link here. And Consumer Credit Counseling Service, they can direct you to like reputable people in your area that can help you resolve your debt situation. They will kind of go through the same kind of stuff that I will when you meet with them, that we're doing right now. But it will be on one-on-one. They'll look at your numbers, and they'll be able to offer, better guidance than what we're doing here. But yeah, so look at that as well. You have to try to borrow inexpensively if you have to borrow. And like I said, avoid credit cards as much as you can. Use any savings if you do have to pay off current debt. It's allowed to how like you get one mulligan or something. I don't play golf, but like you get a mulligan on the golf course, you screw up once and you're like, okay, like nobody saw that, So you kind of get a mulligan once with your savings account, where you can like go into your savings and pay off your like credit cards just one time, just get back to zero, And it's not smart to have savings and also to owe balances on a credit card. Like, you shouldn't be doing that, okay? So make sure that that you're not in that situation. But also, if you will use your savings to pay off your credit card, don't get to that point again. Figure out a path that will keep you from that situation again. And, the big bankruptcy word that we want to try to avoid, but obviously, in our wonderful country, we are able to like wipe our slate clean one time. And, well, not one time. Some people can do it a lot. But that's not the point. But the bankruptcy is, should be used as a last resort to kind of like a start over. But that's going to be obviously a very, very last resort thing, that if there's no other options, I would definitely make sure that I'm talking to these people, the Consumer Credit Counseling Services, and some personal advisor can tell you that this is the only way. But you should try to avoid that as much as you can. So to kind of conclude our conversation here a little bit, I know I've been talking a bunch, but you have to pay more than minimums. When you see those minimums on the credit card statement, like that's not a real number. Like I want you to like kind of laugh at them, like, I know what you're trying to do to me. You're not going to get me like that. I'm not paying this minimum. Like that's how you should look at that, at that statement with that minimum. Never pay minimums. Always pay. First of all, try to pay in full, but never minimums. Also, align your spending with your values. Like, if people are like trying to do something fun, but like, is it something that's truly important to you, or that clothing item, or some kind of a eating out, or figure out what's truly important to you, and say like, these things are non-negotiable. I'm going to spend money on them. This is how much I'm going to spend on them a month. And then all of those other things that are kind of just like maybe your friends' values or your relatives' values, they align with those values, you can like put them aside. There's also something called the snowball method. Let's say you have a couple of different accounts on which you owe money. And what you do is you pay, let's say you have 3 accounts on which you owe money. On 2 of them, you actually do pay a minimum balance, but the rest of the money goes to trying to retire the one credit card with as quickly as possible. Hopefully it's the one that has the highest interest rate as well. So essentially you pay minimums on all your accounts, which I know kind of goes against that top line, but that's already, you're in this debt situation and you're trying to, eliminate as many of those accounts as possible. So you pay minimums on all but one. The one you try to pay off as quickly as possible. Then you move to the next account in the next few months and just pay them off one by one in that way. Also, this is what I've done up in college. Balance transfer card. I once did run up a balance a little bit, and I had a credit card that said to me, Alex, you can have 0% interest so that you can, for like the next year, to pay off your balance if you transfer it. I think they charge like a 3% transfer fee. So if it was like $2,000 that I transferred, maybe it was like $60 or $90 a fee, but then it was interest free for a year, and I worked hard to pay off that credit card. So sometimes you can use this approach, but there are loan consolidation companies out there that will allow you to take all of your loans, all of your credit cards, and put together into, like you can Google home consolidation, debt consolidation loan. And you can put all of those debts into one account with one lender. And there's a pretty good chance that that rate is going to be a lot less than what you're paying on your credit card. So you could pay it off quicker. And the consolidation is also going to be a bit good for your mind a little bit too, like that you don't know like a bunch to many different people, you just own some to like one person. And automatically pre-commit any tax refunds, any bonuses, anything that comes into your life unexpectedly to reducing the debt. No fun from that money, okay? And also, again, negotiating with creditors. Those guys will work with you, those gals, guys, if you contact them, for them, it's not, if they can find a way to get you to pay the most they can get you to pay, it's worthwhile than to go through collectors and all that stuff. That's expensive. They don't want to do that. So they want to get you to pay, and then you want to figure out a way that you can make those payments. So never be afraid to call your creditor and speak to them and say like, look, this is the situation. I have some financial difficulties. COVID also especially has opened the door for a lot of that as well. And people like, you know, everybody's in the same boat. People understand each other, maybe in some ways a little better now as far as COVID anyway, maybe. So yeah, and finally, like if you think about, my God, this guy is like saying all this stuff, it's so hard to do, you know, and it's just, like you do this, you look at this last point right here. Just think about the benefits, like all that hard work. Think about what's on the other side, the benefits. You know, the idea that you're not going to be worried about it. Like, it's so, like, I know what it's like, you know, when you have bills and as a student, or even, you know, after you're a student. And it's just always, you could wake up in the middle of the night thinking about this stuff, like how I'm going to pay for this, how I'm going to pay for that. Trying to avoid that path is, whatever you have to do it is worth it, to not have to worry about this stuff, you know. And also just to know that your credit history is going to be clean when your employers look at you. You are going to have credit available to you when you apply for it. And obviously, you know, buying a home, the big thing is having a good, solid credit report as well. So these are the things I think I came to talk to you about today. 147. If there's any questions, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Fayman. We do actually have a lot of questions in the chat that we were saving for the end.
Lord.
So one of the questions we had was, let's go back up here. I know one was asking about Mint security, and like they request a lot of personal information, so like the reliability of that.
It's it's in the personal financial planning textbook that I teach from. There is like a whole like section devoted to Mint. It's recommended as the best site by the authors. I would not be worried about that.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say that lightly, you know, so.
Yeah. And there was another question about how do we prioritize paying off a credit card versus student loans? Like, which one should money go to first?
Credit card, no doubt, credit card. I'm not even asking what kind of a loan do you have. Whether you have a government loan, then it's definitely credit card. If you have a private loan, I'm 99% sure it's still credit card, because even if it's a private loan for school, it's still going to be, you know, the rate is going to be nothing close to what credit cards charge. I mean, you always will have, if it's a government loan, they'll give you chances. If you have problems, they'll, I've applied for forbearance before on my government school loan, you know, when I had some issues at some point in my life. They'll allow you to, it's easier to deal with government, like as far as if you do need some time, you know, to not make some payments in order to get your house in order, it's going to be easier to deal with that rather than those same issues with the credit card company. So I would try to get rid of the credit card company, even to a point where if you are having issues paying for both credit card and the school loan, maybe contacting your school lender and asking for a period of forbearance so you can get rid of that credit card loans as fast as you can. Maybe you can take a couple of months off from paying those payments, get rid of the credit cards and start paying the school loans again. But yeah, credit cards. You noticed like 4 slides, I think, in this presentation was on credit card.
Do you mind explaining what forbearance is?
Oh, so forbearance, whenever you have a government loan, you can have that with any lender, but the government loans for government student loans can give you forbearance. You can apply for forbearance, meaning you're going to say like, I'm having some hardships in my life, and I would like I lost my job, or I'm in school and I'm having some issues, and they will essentially allow you to not make payments for a certain period of time. That's the forbearance, that they will just chill, and wait for you to get out of your situation. There's some instances where you don't even pay interest while you're having that period. And there's some where they will give you that period, but they will charge you interest meanwhile. But the interest rate on a government loan for school is going to be so way lower than a credit card.
Thank you.
Yep.
Another question was, do you know of any credit cards that are good for students?
The credit card that is good for student is the one that you won't amount any debt on when you leave school. They're all, I recently wrote an article about credit cards, and it's all commoditized now, they basically provide the same service, same identical service. And there's really, there are credit cards where that will force you to pay your balance back. Like American Express has credit cards where you will have to pay back your whole balance every month. So there's no option for for accumulating credit card debt. I mean, if you feel like you might lack the discipline to keep within the means, to keep within your ability to keep the credit balance at zero every month, maybe one of those types of credit cards might work for you. But otherwise, to say one credit card is better than the other, I like the Capital One Venture card. It's a good card because it allows you to earn money on everything you spend, and then you basically credit it towards what you owe. But pretty much every credit card, or many of the credit cards, offer those types of services. So I will say this: I have a good answer. See, I knew if I talk long enough, I'll figure it out. Here's a good answer, guys. Let's say, especially for MSU Denver, I'm kind of new to Denver, 2.5 years now, love it. But if you are from Denver and you have a bank where you've been banking, your whole life, or as long as you've been banking, maybe you already have a car loan there, maybe you don't. I would get a credit card with that bank. It's really good to build a relationship with one institution and to let them get to know you. This is called the relationship banking. And then when you're maybe out of school and maybe you don't have the perfect cookie cutter credit report everything, but you have a relationship with this bank, you've had a checking account, savings account there for a while, you have a credit card that you've been paying off diligently, all these things, it will be easier for you to get a loan from them down the line, whether it's for a home or a business or something like that. So that's my answer. I think that's the better answer.
Another question was, what about prepayment penalties? Is that a thing for paying off car loans earlier? And how do you know if you have something that does have a prepayment penalty?
So, with a car loan, first of all, I'd be very surprised if your car loan has a prepayment penalty. Mortgages used to, or many of them still do, if you pay off a mortgage within a year or 6 months, you might have some penalties. I would be surprised if your car loan has a prepayment penalty. It is possible to obviously call the creditor and ask whether you do. The only thing I would say is, unless you have a very high interest rate on your car loan, I'm not sure if there's a benefit to taking a lot of the money that you have and just to trying to get rid of the car loan as fast as you can. Doing that with a credit card, absolutely. Your high interest balances, absolutely. With a car loan, let's assume it has, you're allowed to own, meaning by these standards that I'm discussing with you here, best practices in this presentation. You know, you're allowed to have a 4-year car loan and just pay it off in 4 years, especially now the interest rates are so low, that it, you know, maybe you can use that money that you have that you might want to direct right now towards paying off a car loan. Just make sure that there's no other ways that in your other areas of finances that money could be used, like maybe building that 3 to 6 months you know, fund. Like if you deplete that fund right now to pay off your car, and then God forbid something happens next month, you know, like that, those are the kinds of things you need to think about.
Okay, thanks. And then the next question is, why is it not smart to have savings and a credit card debt at the same time?
Great question. So I don't know if you've seen how much interest your savings account is paying you right now, at, you know, what rate, but I bet you can count it like with one finger, you know, or somewhere close to that. So it's kind of like bizarre. You know, I want to use words that kind of will make a impression. To have like, let's say $10,000 sitting in a bank account, in a savings account that is earning you 1% interest every month, and then at the same time owe a credit card $10,000 for which you're paying 25% interest. So like it makes no sense, okay? So the best thing to do in that situation, like with the car, taking all the savings and paying off the car loan, I'm a little hesitant. But to get rid of that credit card debt, because it's going to be growing like that. Before, like if right now you can take your 10,000 in savings and pay off that 10,000 in credit card, that's wonderful. But in a year, that 10,000 in savings might be $10,010. That credit card bill might be like, you know, $12,500 or something like that. And suddenly you won't be able to cover it with your savings. And next year is going to grow even higher. So, you know, you really, yeah, it's important to, if you can, to use your savings accounts where you're getting very low interest rate to pay off your credit cards where you're paying very high interest rate. And yeah, that the only thing is like you can't, like I had that slide there, you can do it once. You know, like you can't like do it like, oh, we'll do it now and then we'll do another one later. No, you do this once, you learn your lesson, pay off your credit card, and then you work on building your savings account while keeping your credit card at 0.
The next question is from Kabir. I don't know if you want to elaborate on this, Kabir, but he essentially checked his credit report just a little bit ago and found that his name is written oddly with spaces and no spaces and initials. Should that be something he's worried about?
Kabir, what I would do is there are 3 credit agencies. I would run, you can get a free report from each one of them every year. So I would check it in the other agencies and see whether that is a persistent issue. If it's just one, then you can contact them. They have, it's just notoriously a pain in the butt type of thing to deal with. There's like 20 episodes on dealing with credit reporting agencies and stuff. It's not an easy task to get them to fix something on your report, but you have to do it. So, so yeah, like if you see that on the other 2, it's fine, then contact this one and fix it there. If all of them are messed up, I think there is a pathway where you can fix something in one company and it gets adjusted in the other 2. I'm like 80% sure about that. That would need to be double checked, that you don't have to like change it in all 3 of those. But I would start by checking it within the other 2. And then and if it's fine there, just contact this company. On their website, you should be able to contact them and see if they can fix it. You want to fix it.
Good, thank you so much, sir.
Yes, sir.
And I know it's around the end time, so Sam and Dr. Fayman, I don't know if you want to end. If there were other questions or if we should finish the questions.
It's up to you. I'm not in a hurry.
Yeah, I can stay a little longer if you have to go, Julie. But I think I did notice if there were questions from me, you don't have to ask them, but I can ask the one that came in from Corey. Maybe that would be a good last question.
Okay.
And if anyone's on the call that has to go, it's totally fine if you need to leave, but please don't forget to sign in. And if you like these events, then come again. But Dr. Fayman, the question that Corey had is, isn't it still important to avoid the specific retailer credit cards like gas cards, Lowe's, and then credit cards from stores? And then is it better to get Visa, MasterCard, Discover type credit cards?
It's funny, my wife and I have this argument because she has a lot of cards from like different kinds of stores. And I'm like, why? You just have one credit card and you can use it in any one of those stores. But she'll say like, oh, but if I have it in this one particular store and they're having a sale, then I get like extra, percent off and all that stuff. Like, and that's what she likes.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's some store, like I have a Best Buy account and I've always had one for like 20 years. I've always gone buying some like TV or something and they would give me like 2 years interest free and I would make those payments and pay it off. And that one made me feel good. But in general, I would recommend having either a Visa card or a MasterCard and avoid getting credit accounts in like all kinds of stores. Every time you open a credit account, what they get you in with is they say to you, if you buy something, let's say you come up to the register with $100 worth of stuff and they say to you, if you open an account, we'll give you 20% off.
Mm-hmm.
And then you apply for that account to get that $20 off. Well, I'm here to tell you that that is not worth it. Having a credit check on your record to save $20, that's not a good price. Like maybe if you were gonna save $200-300 for a credit check, maybe it would be a worthwhile thing, So my general, plus it's easier again to keep track of everything if you have, I have one credit card in my wallet and that's it, and that's the one I use. But even though I probably have 3 or 4 or something like that, they're not even in my wallet, they're at home. So I don't see a point of having like a lot of different lines of consumer credit. All of those things will get reflected in the credit score, and for what? That's the question. It's like, what are you getting? If it's some store that you're really, really like dedicated to, and you do a lot of things, and they have like these special sales, then yeah. But never do it just to get like $20 off or $30 off at the register because they're offering you 15 or 20% off for opening an account. No way.
Wow.
Sorry.
Changing my life.
I've definitely done that.
Yeah, I have too. I did that over the winter break for Christmas presents.
TJ Maxx.
I mean, if you guys have a relationship with the store and it's something that you'll be going back to, and they'll give you special offers and whatnot, then it's worth it, but, otherwise just use your Visa.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask a question that's kind of like a follow-up to that?
Yep.
I'm trying to scan though to make sure I'm not asking questions over the student questions. Oh, okay, I think we got the ones in the chat, but I've heard mixed stuff about credit cards like getting closed, like not that I closed it, but just like I haven't used it in forever, and so then it closes because of lack of use. Does that have a negative impact on my credit score, or is that okay?
Wow, you and I are like in sync. So this September, I get an email. I have this one AT&T credit card that I was a member. It was like my college card from like '98. It has a, yeah, I haven't used it in years, but I've always kept it because it was like my first credit. And there's no point in closing a credit card because anytime you close a credit account, there's a couple of points that are taken off from you. So like if you want to stop using a particular piece of plastic, just cut it up and throw it away, but don't actually call and close the account. Like that's what you want to do. But having said that, I received a letter from Citibank. It was AT&T credit card from Citibank. And they told me that they closed my account due to inactivity. And I got so mad, you know, I called them. I'm like, listen, you know, like I've had this thing forever. And so they gave me an offer. They said to me, like, you can get your account back. You know, your membership date is still going to be in the 90s, you know, all of the stuff, your, you know, credit, but we need to run a credit check on you. And purely for sentimental value, I did it, you know, and now like I'm refinancing a house and they called me from the lender saying like, what is this credit that you applied to with Citibank in September? And I'm like, no, it's an old credit. So here's the thing. If your credit card closes due to inactivity, you know, let the sleeping dog lie, you know, don't do as I did, you know, unless it really does have some, it was like my first credit card. That's why I did all of that, but it's totally not worth it. And, but they will close them and you should be able to, you know, get away with having fewer accounts, and it shouldn't be like something that will be a bad thing, you know, for your life because they're closing accounts due to inactivity. But if they send you a letter warning you about it and they say, go into Kohl's and buy this thing or we will close your account, go ahead and buy it. Like if you were going to go there and buy something anyway, you know, you can buy it and then it will keep that account going. It's not going to give you a slight negative hit to your credit history, although it's going to be so slight, you know, compared to like making rent payments on time, lease payments on time, mortgage payments on time, car payments on time, credit card payments on time. Having an account closed, it's very minor. But, you know, but if you can avoid it, you know, do so. If you get a warning, like if I would have gotten a warning with that Citibank card, I would have bought something and kept the account going. You know, there's no purpose to willfully close your own accounts. I know it's a long answer, sorry.
No, it's okay. But if it closes without me using it, then it's totally fine. Because I did just get an email recently that one of them, because when I was in college, I opened up ones from stores. That's where I first did my credit stuff. And a few of them closed. And I was like, oh, crap. I don't know if that's bad or not.
No,